The Lost Treasure of the Golden Squirrel. The New York Zoo was unearthing a 100-year-old time capsule. Kowalski and Rico were keeping a close eye on the event when they noticed the rats sneaking a key shaped like a squirrel's head out of the time capsule. "They're getting away," Kowalski said. "Oh, no, they're not," Skipper responded. Using their toy car, he and Private chased the rats as they made a getaway on the back of Alice's golf cart. As the golf cart sped through the zoo, the rats celebrated. "Now the lost treasure of the golden squirrel will finally belong to the rats," they cried. Private drove close enough to the golf cart for Skipper to snatch the key away from the rats. But the rats fought back, and the king rat managed to retrieve the key. As the king rat cheered, he was knocked in the head by a lamp, and the key flew through the air. King Julian was in his habitat, scolding Maurice about the small balance left in his royal treasury. The king must have enough wealth and treasure to keep him 100% out of touch and oblivious to the needs of his common subjects, he declared, as the key fell into his coffee can. King Julian held it up to get a better look at it, just as the penguins scrambled in and tackled him. King Julian and the penguins wondered what to do with the key as they made their way to Fred the squirrel's tree. As they walked, Skipper asked Kowalski for an analysis. The promise of mystery, adventure, hidden clues, diabolical double crosses, and a thrilling climax that ultimately bashes us all over the head with a lesson about the importance of non-material possessions, reported Kowalski. "Who could say no to a good old-fashioned treasure hunt?" Skipper declared. Fred hurried down his tree when the group knocked on his door. "My granny's up in the tree trying to take a nap," he hushed. They asked him to look at the key, and he did, then scampered away. "We were hoping you could tell us something about it," they yelled after him. Just then, a flash of lightning and a clap of thunder revealed Granny Squirrel. She held up the key and said, "The lost treasure of the golden squirrel. You must find the treasure and destroy it." "Why would we go through all the trouble of finding that treasure if we're just going to destroy it?" asked Maurice. Granny Squirrel brought the group to the base of the obelisk and showed them hieroglyphics of villainous rats. "Because there are those with greed in their souls who will stop at nothing until they have the treasure," answered Granny Squirrel. Granny Squirrel put the key in the obelisk. It opened, revealing Marlene's habitat, their first clue to finding the treasure. As the gang headed toward Marlene's place, they didn't realize that the king rat and his goons were following their every move. As the penguins and lemurs searched Marlene's habitat, she asked what they were looking for. "Could be anything," Skipper replied. "Rico, solve this mystery." So Rico coughed up a chainsaw. Just as Marlene began to get angry, Kowalski knocked on a floor panel and a hidden spiral staircase opened beneath them. He fell down into the darkness. The group climbed down and found a chamber with squirrel symbols on the wall. Fred read the symbols to the gang, telling them that the path to the lost treasure of the golden squirrel was ahead, and to beware of deadly traps. As they traveled down the tunnel, the gang saw a map ahead. King Julian ordered Mort to deal with the booby traps protecting the map. He happily ran forward, triggering a series of deadly traps, but they all missed him. Once he reached the map and grabbed it, the room began to crumble. As the gang fled the tunnel, they ran right into the rats. King Julian got into a tug-of-war with the king rat over the key. King Julian finally ripped the key away, but the rats captured the map and Marlene. Just then, the ceiling fell between the gang and the rats, allowing the rats to escape down the tunnel with Marlene and the map. The gang headed back to the chamber, but it was a dead end. Skipper revealed that their only way out was through a booby trap in the form of a pipe spewing fire. They timed the fire burst, leaped onto the pipe, and narrowly escaped. Finally, the gang crashed up through an underwater grate and into a duck pond. Fred was waiting with a message from the rats. They had to meet them in Chinatown in 1 hour with the key, or they would never see Marlene again. As the gang headed toward Chinatown, Skipper discovered a message on the key's medallion. "Only the pure of heart will have the strength to see the truth," read Fred. Suddenly, Granny Squirrel appeared with a rush of wind, a flash of lightning, and a boom of thunder. "You must risk looking into the eyes of the squirrel. They know your deepest secrets, in your greediest desires. This is the curse of the treasure, she told them. Maurice was the first to get lost in the eyes of the squirrel, and his fantasy appeared before him. He was being waited on by an army of King Julians. He gleefully tossed gold coins and spat seeds at them. Kowalski was next. He fantasized about a giant electronically enhanced human brain that was being attached to his head. Finally, Rico looked into the squirrel's jeweled eyes. He dreamed that he was in a wrestling ring, winning an intense fight against a couple of robots. Maurice, Kowalski, and Rico began to fight over the key. In vain, Private attempted to remind them that they needed to give it to the rats to save their friend Marlene. Suddenly, Granny Squirrel appeared again. "It's the curse," she cried. "Their greed is changing them. The treasure must be destroyed." As the three continued to fight for the key, it came loose and landed in Skipper's hands. Just then, the rats appeared, and the king rat happily took the key, along with the map and Marlene. When he hit a brick on the wall of the alley, a secret door was revealed, and the rats were gone just as quickly as they'd arrived. The rats headed down a tunnel whose walls were covered with keyholes. As the king rat tried to fit the key into every hole, Marlene fell under the spell of the key. She fantasized that her habitat was beautifully redesigned and filled with guitar-playing otters. Suddenly, Marlene snapped out of her fantasy, greedily grabbed the key, and quickly inserted it into a hole that matched the symbol on the key. A hidden chamber was revealed, where a giant statue of a golden squirrel stood surrounded by gold, jewels, and treasures. As the rats dove into the treasure, the room began to shake. 2 platforms lifted from the floor, with Marlene on one and the rats on the other. Beneath the chamber, a pool of molten lava bubbled and boiled. The chamber door opened again, and Skipper, Private, Fred, and King Julian flew in, landing on Marlene's platform. "How could you have found us? We took the map!" the Rat King cried. "Fortunately, we have photographic memory, a digital camera," Skipper replied, revealing a photo of the map. Once again, Granny Squirrel appeared. She dared everyone to look into the eyes of the squirrel to find the one pure of heart who could see the truth. So Skipper grabbed the squirrel and looked into its eyes. He dreamed he was shopping for missiles, tanks, and helicopters. "Woohoo!" he cried joyfully. Private was next to stare into the eyes on the medallion, and his fantasy involved lots of baby ducklings. "They're so cute, and they're all mine!" Private exclaimed. King Julian yelled for them to stop, but when no one listened, he decided to look into the eyes on the medallion himself. King Julian was surprised to find himself in his habitat on his own throne, surrounded by Mort and Maurice. "I get it! I see the truth!" he declared. "I already have my greatest desire." "The only way to win is to get rid of all the gold. It will sink the rat's platform," King Julian declared, and began shoveling gold off his friend's platform. As their platform began to rise, King Julian reached a keyhole and inserted the medallion key. Suddenly, the entire room tilted. All the treasure fell onto the rat's platform and then tumbled down to the molten lava below. Finally, the adventure was over, and the animals were gathered back at the zoo. King Julian held up the key and boasted, "So it turns out that I am the one who is pure of the heart. Me, yes, me." Private sighed. "If I never hear another word about treasure or clues or—" Just then, Private was interrupted by a rumble of thunder and a flash of lightning. A pigeon swooped down and handed Private a golden feather. "No time to explain," the pigeon said. "This is the legendary feather of the Golden Falcon. Guard it with your life." Then he flew away. Skipper's eyes lit up with excitement, and he asked Kowalski for an analysis. "High probability of globe-trotting escapades, ruthless villains, and ancient riches, all tied up nicely by the heartfelt realization that we had what we were looking for inside us all along," Kowalski answered. "Ooh, I'm in!" cried Skipper. "Who could say no to a mystical quest?" he asked, as the gang slunk away. The end.